Ethan Morrison pushed open his front door and stopped dead. The smell hit him first. Beef stew, fresh bread, something sweet baking. His hand went to his hip where his rifle should have been, but he'd left it with the horses. Someone was in his house. Someone had made themselves at home in the 3 weeks he'd been gone. He stepped inside boots heavy on the wooden floor and saw her standing at his stove, stirring something in his cast-iron pot, like she belonged there. Willa Hayes turned around, met his eyes without flinching, and said the last thing he expected. "Welcome home, Ethan. I hope you're hungry. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and stay with me until the end of this story. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled." Ethan didn't move. Couldn't move. His muscles had locked up somewhere between the doorway and the impossible sight in front of him. "What are you doing in my house?" Willa set down the wooden spoon with deliberate care. "Making you supper." "I can see that. I'm asking why." "Because you've been gone 3 weeks, and I thought you might be tired of your own cooking. Or lack of it." He took another step inside, slow and cautious, like approaching a spooked horse. "How did you even know I was coming back today?" "Tom Fletcher at the Mercantile mentioned your herd was spotted near the North Ridge this morning. Simple arithmetic after that." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That doesn't explain what you're doing here. In my house. Uninvited." "You're right, it doesn't." Willa wiped her hands on the apron she'd apparently found in his kitchen, the one that had belonged to his mother, packed away for years. "But I'm here anyway." "Mrs. Hayes?" "It's Miss Hayes now, has been for 2 years." Her voice didn't waver. "And you can call me Willa, since I've already made myself comfortable enough to use your kitchen." He stood there, hat still on trail dust, coating every inch of him, trying to make sense of this woman. She looked nothing like the prim schoolteacher he'd seen in town, always proper, always distant. Here in his kitchen, with her sleeves rolled up and her hair coming loose from its pins, she looked almost dangerous. "This isn't proper." "No, it's not." She turned back to the stove. "The stew's almost ready. You should wash up." "I should—" He stopped himself. "You can't just walk into a man's home and start giving orders." "I didn't walk in. I used the key you keep under the loose board on the porch, 3rd one from the left." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "Not exactly Fort Knox, Mr. Morrison." His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You had no right." "You're absolutely correct. I had no right, no invitation, and no business being here." Willa pulled the pot off the heat. "But I am here, the food is ready, and you haven't eaten a decent meal in weeks. So, you can either throw me out and eat cold beans from a can, or you can sit down and let someone take care of you for once in your stubborn life." The silence stretched between them like a rope pulled taut. "Why?" The word came out rougher than he intended. "Why would you do this?" Willa's shoulders softened slightly. "Because I know what it's like to come home to an empty house, to walk through that door and have nothing but silence waiting for you. I know what it does to a person, Ethan. I know it better than you think." Something in her voice made him look at her differently, really look at her. He saw the shadows under her eyes, the slight tremble in her hands, that she was trying to hide the way she held herself together like glass that had been broken and carefully glued back into shape. "Your husband died 3 years ago. Consumption took him over 6 months. She met his eyes directly. "I spent every day of those 6 months watching him fade away. And then I spent 2 years after that learning how to live in a house that echoed. So yes, I know exactly what you're feeling right now, standing there wondering if you should trust this or run from it." Ethan pulled off his hat slowly. "I could have you run out of town for this." "You could, but you won't." "How do you know?" "Because if you were going to, you would have already done it instead of standing here arguing with me." She gestured to the table where 2 plates sat waiting. "Now are you going to wash up, or do I have to throw this perfectly good stew to the hogs?" He stared at her for another long moment, then turned and walked to the basin by the back door. The water was already waiting, still warm. She'd thought of everything. When he came back, she'd already served the plates. The table looked different than he'd ever seen it. 2 settings cloth napkins he didn't know he owned. The good silverware he'd never bothered to unpack. It looked like a home, instead of just a place to sleep between cattle drives. He sat down across from her, still wary. This is wrong. Probably. Willa picked up her fork. But I'm tired of only doing what's right and proper. That got me nothing but a cold house in Boston and a lot of well-meaning condolences. So you came to Montana. So I came to Montana. Took the teaching position, rented that little room above the Mercantile, and tried to convince myself that starting over was the same as healing. She took a bite of stew, chewed thoughtfully. Turns out they're not the same thing at all. Ethan tasted the food. It was better than anything he'd had in months, maybe years. You're a good cook. My mother insisted. Said a woman needed to know her way around a kitchen. Willa's mouth twisted slightly. She never mentioned what to do when you're cooking for one, and the kitchen feels like a tomb. Is that what this is? You feeling sorry for yourself, so you decided to ambush me with supper? Her eyes flashed. I'm not ambushing you with anything. I'm offering you basic human kindness. If you're too proud or too stubborn to accept it, that's your problem, not mine. Human kindness. He set down his fork. That's what you call breaking into someone's home. I call it recognizing when someone needs help and actually doing something about it, instead of just praying from a distance and hoping God handles the details. I don't need help. Everyone needs help, Ethan. The only difference is some people are honest enough to admit it. She pushed her plate away slightly. I've watched you come into town these past months. You buy your supplies. You nod at people. You're perfectly polite. And you're completely alone. You live like you're still out on that cattle drive, even when you're surrounded by people. You don't know anything about me. I know you were in the war. I know you came back different like most men did. I know you built this ranch from nothing, and you work yourself half to death because it's easier than sitting still with your own thoughts. Her voice gentled. And I know that look in your eyes when you think no one's watching. That look that says you've seen things you can't unsee and lost people you can't get back. Ethan's hand tightened around his fork. You need to leave. Not until we finish this meal. Mrs. Hayes. Willa. This isn't... He struggled for words. You can't just decide to fix me like I'm some broken wagon wheel. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to feed you. She picked up her fork again, calm as Sunday morning. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Fixing someone means you think they're broken. Feeding someone means you think they deserve to eat a hot meal and not be alone while they do it. She took another bite. Now eat your supper before it gets cold. He wanted to argue, wanted to stand up and tell her to get out of his house and stay out of his life. But the stew was good, and the company was unexpected. Not unwelcome, which bothered him more than the breaking and entering. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Real silence, not the echoing kind that made him aware of every creak in the floorboards. How did you find the key? He finally asked. I didn't. I watched you hide it 2 months ago when you came back from your last drive and thought no one was looking. You were watching me. I watch everyone. It's what teachers do. We observe. Willa met his eyes steadily. And I noticed that you always check that board 3 times before you go inside, like you're making sure it's still there. Like you're making sure you can still get into your own home. He felt exposed, seen in a way he hadn't been since before the war. That's intrusive. That's honest. She stood and began clearing the plates. There's apple pie on the counter. I'll cut you a piece while you tell me what really happened out there on this drive. Nothing happened. We moved cattle, same as always. Liar. She sliced into the pie with practiced precision. You've got a bruise on your left temple that's about a week old. You're favoring your right leg, and your hands are shaking just enough that you think I won't notice. Ethan looked down at his hands. She was right. Stampede, 4th night out. Lost 2 steers and nearly lost Johnson when his horse went down. But you didn't lose him. No, got him out of the way just in time. He accepted the plate she handed him. Took a hoof to the head for my trouble. Hence the bruise. Hence the bruise. Willa sat back down with her own slice. Did you see a doctor? Didn't need one. That's not what I asked. No, I didn't see a doctor. He took a bite of pie to avoid looking at her. It was perfect. Happy? Not particularly, but at least you're being honest now. She ate slowly, deliberately. My husband used to do that. Refuse medical care, insist he was fine, keep working until he collapsed. By the time he finally admitted something was wrong, it was too late. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't kill him. The consumption did. She set down her fork. But I learned something from watching him die. I learned that pride is expensive, and stubbornness is deadly, and sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is let someone else help them. Ethan studied her across the table. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer, more delicate. I was once. Boston society has very specific expectations for widows. Lots of black dresses and quiet weeping and appropriate grief. Her mouth hardened. Her mouth. I got tired of performing sadness for people who didn't actually care, so I came here. To teach school. To teach children, yes, but also to teach myself how to live again. She looked around his kitchen. Turns out it's harder than I thought. So you decided to practice on me. I decided to do something that scared me. Breaking into your house terrified me. Cooking this meal terrified me. Sitting here having this conversation absolutely terrifies me. Her voice dropped. But I'm tired of being scared of everything. Tired of living so carefully that I'm not really living at all. He understood that. Understood it better than he wanted to admit. This can't happen again. Why not? Because people will talk. They already talk. About you, about me, about everyone in this godforsaken town who doesn't fit into their neat little boxes. Willa stood and began gathering the dishes. Let them talk. I've survived worse than gossip. Ethan rose and caught her wrist gently. I mean it. This was kind of you. But it can't become a habit. She looked down at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. Are you afraid of what they'll say, or are you afraid of what you might feel if I keep doing this? The question landed like a punch. Both. At least she smiled at his honesty. Well, points for not lying about it. He released her wrist. You should go before it gets full dark. I brought a lantern. Willa. I know. I'm going. She untied the apron and folded it carefully. But I'm leaving the leftovers. There's enough stew for tomorrow, and the pie should keep for a few days if you cover it. You don't have to. I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. She collected her shawl from the chair. There's a difference there too if you're willing to see it. He walked her to the door, every instinct screaming at him to ask her to stay to keep talking to fill the silence for just a few more hours. But he didn't. Couldn't. Willa paused on the threshold. Thank you for not throwing me out immediately. Thank you for the meal. You're welcome. She looked up at him, and in the lamplight, he could see the same loneliness in her eyes that he felt in his bones. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Willa. He watched her walk down the path toward town, lantern swinging gently in her hand. Watched until the light disappeared over the ridge. Then he went back inside to an empty house that somehow felt emptier than it had before. The dishes were done. She'd left everything clean and put away. On the table sat a jar of preserves he hadn't noticed before, with a note tucked underneath, for your breakfast. Try not to be alone if you can help it. W. Ethan picked up the note, read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He told himself he'd throw it away later. Told himself this was a one-time thing, a strange kindness from a lonely woman who didn't know any better. But he kept the note. And the next morning, when he opened that jar of preserves and spread it on bread that was still soft, He thought about her standing in his kitchen, like she'd always been there. Thought about her voice cutting through his defenses with surgical precision. Thought about the way she'd looked at him and seen straight through to all the broken parts he tried so hard to hide. 3 days later, he rode into town for supplies. Told himself it was routine. Told himself he needed flour and coffee and lamp oil. Told himself it had nothing to do with the school teacher who'd invaded his home and upended his carefully constructed solitude. But when he passed the schoolhouse and heard her voice through the open window teaching children their letters, he stopped. Just for a moment. Just long enough to hear her laugh at something one of the students said. Tom Fletcher caught him staring. "She's something, ain't she? That Willa Hayes." Ethan grunted and kept walking. "Heard she made you supper the other night." He stopped cold. "Where'd you hear that?" "She bought ingredients, more than usual, right before you got back." Tom grinned. "This is a small-town Morrison. People notice things. People should mind their own business." "Maybe, but they won't." Tom leaned against the mercantile counter. "You could do worse, you know. She's smart, independent, got her own money. And she clearly doesn't scare easy if she's willing to take on a ornery cuss like you. Nobody's taking on anybody. If you say so." Tom started tallying up supplies. "But if I were you, I'd at least thank her proper for the meal. Bring her some flowers or something. Show you've got manners." Ethan paid for his supplies and left without answering. But Tom's words stuck in his head like burrs on wool. Thank her proper. Like this was some kind of courtship instead of an unwanted intrusion. Except it hadn't felt unwanted. Not really. And that was the problem. He made it all the way back to the ranch before admitting to himself that he wanted to see her again. Wanted to hear her sharp tongue and watch her move through his kitchen like she owned it. Wanted to sit across from her and trade verbal blows until they both forgot to be so careful with their words. That terrified him more than any stampede ever had. The next Sunday, he found himself in town again. Told himself he needed to check on a horse at the livery. Told himself it had nothing to do with the fact that Willa usually walked to church around this time. She rounded the corner in a blue dress that made her eyes look like storm clouds, saw him standing there, stopped. "Mr. Morrison?" "Miss Hayes." They stood 10 feet apart, a whole conversation happening in the silence. "Nice day," she finally said. "It is." "You're in town." "Needed to check on a horse." "On Sunday." "Horses don't observe the Sabbath." Her mouth twitched. "Neither do stubborn ranchers, apparently." He almost smiled. Almost. "I wanted to thank you for the meal. It was good." "You're welcome." And invasive. Also true. She tilted her head. "Are you going to hold a grudge about it? Or are you going to get over yourself and admit you enjoyed the company?" "I haven't decided yet." "Well, let me know when you do." She started to walk past him. "Willa." She stopped. Turned. Waited. "If you wanted to. I mean, if you found yourself with extra time." He forced the words out like they were costing him. The ranch could use some organizational help. With supplies. Inventory. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you asking me to come back to your house?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to help me organize my supply shed. As a favor, nothing more." "Nothing more." "That's what I said." She studied him like he was a particularly complicated arithmetic problem. "Next Saturday afternoon, and I'm bringing my own lunch this time. I won't give the gossips more ammunition by cooking in your kitchen twice." "Fine." "Fine." She walked away toward the church, back straight, chin up. He watched her go and wondered what the hell he'd just done. Wondered why the thought of seeing her again made his chest feel less tight than it had in years. Wondered if maybe, just maybe, being a little less alone might not be the worst thing in the world. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel sharper, more real. Ethan had been up since dawn, telling himself he was just doing normal ranch work, not preparing for Willa's arrival. But he'd swept the supply shed twice, organized tools that didn't need organizing, and changed his shirt 3 times before settling on one that looked like he hadn't tried at all. When he heard the wagon approaching at precisely 2 o'clock, his stomach tightened in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. Willa climbed down before he could offer help, carrying a wicker basket and wearing a practical brown dress that somehow made her look more formidable than any fancy gown could have. She surveyed the ranch with the same assessing gaze she probably used on unruly students. "You've been cleaning." "I keep things tidy." "The supply shed is visible from here, Ethan. I can see fresh broom marks in the dirt." She walked toward him, not smiling, but not hiding her amusement either. "You didn't have to do that." "Didn't do it for you. Did it because it needed doing." "Of course." She set down her basket near the porch. "Shall we start then, before you invent more chores to avoid actually talking to me?" He led her to the shed, acutely aware of how close she walked beside him. Inside, rows of shelves held supplies in what he'd thought was reasonable order until she started pulling things down and making small, disapproving sounds. "What?" "You've got nails mixed with screws, 3 different kinds of rope all tangled together, and I'm fairly certain this grain has been here since before the war." She held up a sack. "Please tell me you're not feeding this to your horses." "That's for emergencies." "The only emergency this would help with is poisoning." She set it aside firmly. "This all needs to be sorted properly. Categories, labels, rotation schedule. I know where everything is. Do you know where your rat poison is stored relative to your animal feed?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "Point taken." They worked in silence for a while, her directing him moving supplies according to her increasingly specific instructions. She had a system for everything, and despite his initial resistance, he had to admit it made sense. "You're good at this," he said, stacking bags of grain in the order she'd specified. "I organize 30 children every day. This is simple by comparison." She wiped dust from her hands. "At least supplies don't argue back or put frogs in each other's lunch pails." "That happen often." "Last week, the Donnelly boy thought it would impress Sarah Miller." Willa shook her head. "I made him write 'Frogs are not romantic gestures' 100 times. Ethan found himself almost smiling. "Did it work?" "He's now leaving wildflowers on her desk instead. Slightly better, though, still against school rules." She paused, looking at him directly. "Why did you really ask me here, Ethan?" The question caught him off guard. "I told you, the shed needed organizing." The shed was fine, messy but functional. She crossed her arms. "So why?" He set down the sack he'd been holding. "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You're just afraid to say it." "Maybe I wanted to see if that night was real. If you were real, or if I'd imagined the whole damn thing." "And? You're real." He looked at her standing there in his shed covered in dust, completely unbothered by the mess. "Too real. Is that a problem?" "I don't know yet." Willa moved closer, and he could smell the lavender soap she used. "I scare you." "You terrify me." "Good." Her voice softened. "You terrify me too. That makes us even." "How do you figure?" "Because I haven't let myself care about anyone since William died. Haven't wanted to. It was easier to be alone, to keep everything at a distance." She met his eyes. "And then I walked into your house and saw someone who understood that loneliness, and it terrified me, because suddenly I wanted something I'd convinced myself I didn't need anymore." His throat tightened. "What did you want?" "To not be invisible. To matter to someone who wasn't obligated to care." She reached out, touched his arm lightly. "To feel something other than numb." Ethan looked down at her hand on his arm. Such a small gesture, but it felt like the most dangerous thing that had happened to him in years. "I can't promise you anything." "I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for honesty." Her hand dropped away. "Can you do that much?" "I can try." "Then try this. Tell me what you're thinking right now. Not what you think you should say, but what's actually going through your head." He took a breath. I'm thinking that having you here feels right in a way that scares the hell out of me. I'm thinking that I've spent 6 years building walls around myself, and you walked through them like they weren't even there. I'm thinking—" He stopped, the words catching. "Keep going." "I'm thinking that if I let myself want this want, it's going to hurt when it ends. And I don't know if I can survive that kind of hurt again." Willa's expression shifted, something raw crossing her face. "You think I don't know about that kind of hurt? I watched my husband die for 6 months, Ethan. 6 months of watching him fade away a little more each day, knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. And when he finally died, I felt relief. Do you understand what that does to a person? To be relieved that someone you loved is dead? That's not your fault. Isn't it? I was supposed to love him enough to want him to keep fighting, but instead I was grateful it was over. Grateful I didn't have to watch anymore, didn't have to pretend I still saw my husband in that wasted shell of a man." Her voice cracked. "So don't talk to me about hurt, like you're the only one who knows what it costs." The silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a storm. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't mean— I know what you meant, but you need to understand something." She stepped closer. "I came here to Montana to escape that guilt, to start over where nobody knew me as poor Willa, whose husband died so tragically. And for a while that worked. I could be just the school teacher, just another person trying to make a life on the frontier. But then I saw you, and I recognized something in you that I saw in myself. Someone who was so busy running from the past that they'd forgotten how to live in the present." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Tell me about the war, Ethan. Tell me what you're really running from." His hands clenched into fists. "No." "Why not?" "Because some things are better left buried. Nothing stays buried forever. It just rots and poisons everything around it." She reached for his hand, uncurling his fist gently. "Talk to me." "I can't." "You can. You're just choosing not to." Her thumb traced across his knuckles. "What happened?" The touch broke something in him. Words started spilling out before he could stop them. There was a boy. Couldn't have been more than 17. Fresh-faced, eager, thought war was going to be some grand adventure. Ethan's voice went flat. "I was his sergeant. Supposed to keep him alive. Supposed to teach him how to survive." "What was his name?" "Danny. Danny Cooper from Pennsylvania. Used to talk about his sweetheart back home, how he was going to marry her when the war ended." He pulled his hand away from hers, needing the distance. "We were pinned down, taking fire from 3 sides. I told him to stay down, told him to wait for my signal. But he panicked. Stood up to run. I tried to grab him, but he was hit. Took 3 bullets before he even knew what happened. Died in my arms, asking me to tell his sweetheart he was sorry. Sorry he wouldn't be coming home. Sorry he broke his promise." Willa's eyes glistened. "That wasn't your fault. I was his sergeant. You were a man in an impossible situation. I should have held on to him harder. Should have. Should have what stopped bullets with your bare hands, made him immortal through sheer force of will." She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. "You did what you could. The rest was out of your control. Tell that to Danny's sweetheart. Tell that to his mother, who wrote me letters for 2 years asking me to explain exactly how her son died, wanting details I couldn't give her because they were too horrific. Did you write back? Every time. Even when I wanted to burn the letters, throw them away, pretend they didn't exist." His jaw clenched. "Because I owed her that much. Owed Danny that much. You owed yourself more than spending the rest of your life punishing yourself for something you couldn't prevent." Willa's grip tightened. "How many more, Ethan? How many more soldiers died under your command?" 14, over 3 years. 14 men who trusted me to keep them alive. And how many did you save? He blinked, thrown by the question. What? You heard me. How many men made it home because of you? How many survived because you were there? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. You've been carrying the weight of 14 deaths for 6 years, but you won't let yourself count the ones you saved. Why? Because they don't balance out. No, they don't. But they matter. Those men went home to their families, their sweethearts, their lives because you kept them alive. Doesn't that count for anything? Ethan turned away, unable to look at her anymore. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Explain to me why you think you deserve to suffer alone for the rest of your life. Because if I stop, if I let myself forget even for a moment, then they died for nothing. Then I'm just another man who survived when better men didn't. Better men. Willa's voice went hard. You think those soldiers were better than you? You think Danny Cooper would want you to spend your whole life drowning in guilt over his death? It doesn't matter what he'd want. He's dead. And you're alive. That has to mean something. It means I got lucky. It means I'm a coward who stayed alive while braver men died. She slapped him. Not hard, but sharp enough to snap his head around. He stared at her in shock. Don't you dare! Her voice shook with fury. Don't you dare call yourself a coward! You carried those men with you for 6 years. You wrote letters to their families. You built a life here despite everything you've been through. That's not cowardice, Ethan. That's survival. That's strength. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that I watched my husband give up. I know what it looks like when someone decides dying is easier than living. And I know that you're nothing like that. She grabbed his face with both hands. You're still here. You're still fighting. That makes you one of the bravest men I've ever met, even if you're too stubborn to see it. His hands came up to circle her wrists, but he didn't push her away. Why do you care? Because someone needs to. Because you're worth caring about even if you don't believe it. Her voice softened. And because I'm tired of watching you punish yourself for being human. Willa, no, you listen to me now. I came to your house that night because I couldn't stand the thought of you coming home to nothing. And I came here today because I wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, we could help each other stop being so damn alone all the time. She released his face but didn't step back. But I can't do this if you're going to keep treating yourself like you're not worth saving. I never asked you to save me. I'm not trying to save you, you stubborn fool. I'm trying to show you that you're allowed to be happy. That you're allowed to want things and have things and not feel guilty about it every second of every day. He stared at her, this fierce woman who'd crashed into his life and refused to let him hide anymore. What if I don't know how? Then we'll figure it out together. She took his hand again, gentler this time. One day at a time. One moment at a time. Until being happy doesn't feel like betraying the dead. Something in his chest cracked open. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But that's not really the point, is it? She managed a small smile. The point is whether you're willing to try. Whether you're willing to let someone in, even if it terrifies you. And if I hurt you, then I'll survive. I've survived worse. Her thumb stroked across his knuckles again. But what if you don't? What if instead of hurt, we find something worth keeping? You're asking me to take a hell of a leap. I'm asking you to take a step, just one. See how it feels. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, thought about Danny Cooper and all the others, thought about 6 years of isolation and guilt, thought about Willa standing in his kitchen with her sharp tongue and soft eyes offering him something he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. One step, he said quietly. One step. He pulled her closer slowly, giving her every chance to back away. She didn't. When their foreheads touched, he closed his eyes and just breathed, letting himself feel the warmth of another person after so long in the cold. This is terrifying, he whispered. I know. I might run, might push you away. I know that too. Why are you willing to risk it? Because the alternative is going back to being alone, and I've had enough of that to last a lifetime. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Besides, you're worth the risk, even if you don't see it yet. Before he could respond, the sound of hoofbeats interrupted them. They stepped apart quickly, Willa smoothing her hair, while Ethan turned to see who was approaching. Tom Fletcher rode up on his bay mare, grinning like he'd just won a prize. "Afternoon, didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting," Willa said smoothly. "I was just helping Mr. Morrison organize his supplies." "That's so." Tom's grin widened. "Mighty neighborly of you, Miss Hayes." "I try to be helpful where I can." Ethan shot Tom a warning look. "What do you want, Fletcher?" "Came to let you know the Johnson boys' horse threw a shoe. They're wondering if you could take a look, seeing as how you're better with horses than most." "I'll head over later." "Appreciate it." Tom tipped his hat to Willa. "Ma'am, enjoy your organizing." He rode off, still grinning. As soon as he was out of sight, Ethan cursed under his breath. "By tomorrow, the whole town will know you were here." "Let them know." Willa picked up where they'd left off in the shed, completely unconcerned. "I'm not ashamed of helping a neighbor." "They won't see it that way." "Then they can think what they like. I stopped caring about gossip when I moved here." She handed him a box of nails. "Besides, if we're going to try this, we might as well be honest about it." "Try what exactly?" She paused, looked at him directly. "Whatever this is. Whatever it's becoming." His heart hammered. "You're asking me to court you. I'm asking you to stop pretending you don't want to. There's a difference. Willa, I don't know if I can give you what you think I deserve. Be the man you think I should have." She shook her head. "I'm not asking for perfection, Ethan. I'm asking for honesty, for effort, for a chance to see if two broken people can maybe build something whole together. What if we just break each other worse? What if we don't?" She stepped closer again. "What if instead of focusing on all the ways this could go wrong, we focused on the possibility that it might go right?" He wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But looking at her standing there determined and fierce and willing to fight for something he'd given up on years ago, he couldn't find the words. "You're relentless." "I'm hopeful. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, relentless means I won't give up. Hopeful means I believe there's something worth not giving up for." She touched his chest right over his heart. "And I think you're worth it, Ethan Morrison. Even if you don't think so yet." The touch burned through his shirt like a brand. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're kind even when you're trying to be hard. I know you're loyal to a fault. I know you carry other people's pain because you think you deserve to suffer." Her hand spread flat against his chest. "And I know that underneath all that guilt and fear there's a man who wants to be happy, who wants to live instead of just surviving. I can feel it. Your heart's beating too hard for someone who's given up. Maybe it's just beating hard because you're touching me." A smile ghosted across her lips. "Maybe. But that proves my point, doesn't it? You're not as dead inside as you pretend to be." He covered her hand with his, holding it against his chest. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to have supper with me. Really have supper, not just tolerate my presence while you plot ways to avoid me afterward." "When?" "Tomorrow. Sunday, after church." "People will definitely talk then." "Good. Let them get used to seeing us together." Her eyes challenged him. "Unless you're too scared of a little gossip." "I'm not scared of gossip. I'm scared of—" He stopped, unable to finish. "Of caring about me and losing me. I know. I'm scared of the same thing." She squeezed his hand. "But I'm more scared of letting that fear keep me from living. Aren't you?" The question hung between them like a dare. "Yes," he finally admitted. "God help me, yes." "Then say you'll come. Say you'll stop fighting this and just see where it goes." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw his own fear reflected back at him. Saw her own scars, her own battles, her own desperate hope that maybe this time things could be different. And he made a choice that terrified him more than any battlefield ever had. All right, Sunday, after church. Her smile could have lit the whole territory. Good, I'll make pot roast. Breaking into my house again. No, this time you're coming to mine. She pulled her hand away, leaving his chest feeling cold. Fair's fair after all. Your place is a room above the mercantile. It's small, but it's mine, and it has a stove and a table, which is all we need. She brushed past him toward her basket. Now, if you'll excuse me, I should get back before it gets dark. Wouldn't want to give the gossips more ammunition. He followed her outside, watching as she climbed into her wagon with practiced ease. She looked down at him, and for a moment, everything else fell away. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For taking that step. I know it cost you. It's just supper. No, it's not, and we both know it. She gathered the reins. I'll see you tomorrow, Ethan. Don't make me come find you. I'll be there. Promise. He hesitated, then nodded. Promise. She smiled, really smiled, and drove away. Ethan stood there long after she'd disappeared, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to, and why the thought of seeing her again made him feel more alive than he had in 6 years. Sunday morning found Ethan standing in front of his mirror for the 4th time, trying to decide if he looked like a man going to dinner or a man preparing for his own execution. He'd shaved twice, changed shirts 3 times, and seriously considered riding in the opposite direction of Silver Creek. But he'd made a promise. And despite everything, he was still a man who kept his word. Church was agony. He sat in the back like always, but this time he was painfully aware of Willa 3 rows ahead. Her back straight, her attention on Reverend Matthew's sermon about charity and community. Every time someone glanced his way, he wondered if they knew. If Tom Fletcher had already spread the word that the hermit rancher was courting the Boston widow. When the service ended, he tried to slip out quickly, but Mrs. Patterson cornered him at the door. Mr. Morrison, how lovely to see you in town 2 weeks in a row. Ma'am. I hear Miss Hayes has been helping you organize your ranch. Her smile was too sweet, too knowing. How generous of her to offer her time like that. She's a helpful neighbor. Oh, I'm sure she is. Very helpful indeed, Mrs. Patterson's eyes glittered with barely contained gossip. It's just so unusual for a single woman to spend time alone with a single man. People do talk, you know. Then people should find better things to do with their time. I'm simply saying that if Miss Hayes values her reputation is spotless, and anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. His voice went cold. Are we clear, Mrs. Patterson? The older woman's face flushed. Well, I never. Good. Let's keep it that way. He walked away before she could respond, his jaw tight with anger. This was exactly what he'd feared. The whispers, the judgment, the way small-minded people could poison something good before it even had a chance to grow. Willa was waiting outside talking to Sarah Miller's mother. When she saw him, she excused herself and walked over completely unbothered by the stares following her movement. You look angry. Mrs. Patterson was expressing concern about your reputation. Ah, the usual then. Willa adjusted her gloves. What did you tell her? That anyone who questions your character would have to go through me first. Something warm flashed in her eyes. My knight in dusty armor. I'm serious, Willa. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I know, but I stopped letting other people's opinions run my life when I left Boston. She linked her arm through his deliberately where everyone could see. Shall we scandalize them further by walking together in broad daylight? You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying watching you defend me. There's a difference. She steered him toward the mercantile. Come on, dinner won't cook itself. The stairs to her room were narrow and steep. Ethan followed her up, hyper-aware of how small the space was, how intimate. Her room was exactly what he'd expected, tidy, efficient, with books stacked on every available surface, and a small stove in the corner that was already warming the space. "It's not much," she said, removing her hat. "But it's mine. It's more than I expected." "You expected a hovel. I expected something more, austere, given your Boston upbringing." "Boston taught me to appreciate comfort. Montana taught me to make do with what I have." She moved to the stove, checking the pot already simmering there. "Besides, I've learned that home isn't about how much space you have. It's about whether you feel safe there." "Do you feel safe here?" She paused, considering. "Most days. Some nights I lie awake and wonder what I'm doing in this God-forsaken territory miles from anything I knew. But then, morning comes and I remember why I left." "Why did you leave, really?" "Because Boston was suffocating me with sympathy. Everyone wanted to help poor Willa, tragic Willa, the young widow who'd lost her husband so tragically." She stirred the pot with more force than necessary. "They threw me charity balls, introduced me to suitable men, made sure I knew my place in their careful social hierarchy, and every single day I could feel myself disappearing into their expectations of who I should be." "So, you ran." "I left. There's a difference." She turned to face him. "Running implies you're escaping something. Leaving means you're choosing something different. I chose this. Chose the possibility of building a life on my own terms, instead of letting other people dictate what my grief should look like." Ethan moved closer, drawn by the fierce honesty in her voice. "Do you regret it?" "Some days, when the wind cuts through these walls, and I'm burning my last candle to grade papers. When students look at me like I'm some exotic creature that wandered into their town. When men like Tom Fletcher make assumptions about why a woman my age is still unmarried." She met his eyes. "But then I have days like yesterday. Days when I remember why taking risks is worth it. Because of me. Because of possibility. Because of the chance that maybe I'm not done living yet." She reached up, touched his face gently. "You feel the same way. I can see it in your eyes. You're terrified that wanting something means you'll lose it, but you want it anyway." "Willa." The door banged open. Ethan spun around to find Tom Fletcher standing there, face flushed with urgency. "Morrison, you need to come. Now." "What's wrong?" "It's your ranch. Smoke visible from the North Ridge. Could be a grass fire spreading toward your buildings." Ethan's blood went cold. "How long ago?" "Spotted it 20 minutes ago. Came straight here." He was already moving toward the door when Willa grabbed his arm. "I'm coming with you." "No, you stay here where it's safe." "Like hell I will. You'll need every hand you can get if it's a real fire." "Willa, this isn't—" "Don't you dare tell me what I can or can't do. I've fought fires before. Boston had plenty." She was already grabbing her shawl. "We're wasting time arguing." Tom looked between them. "She's right. Every person counts." Ethan cursed, but didn't argue further. They ran for the horses, Willa keeping pace despite her skirts. Tom had brought extra mounts. Within minutes, they were riding hard toward the ranch, Ethan's mind racing through worst-case scenarios. But when they crested the ridge, his stomach dropped. It wasn't a grass fire. It was his barn. Flames were already consuming the northern wall smoke, billowing black against the sky. "The horses!" Willa's shout cut through his shock. He was off his mount before it fully stopped running toward the barn. He could hear the animals screaming inside, smell the acrid smoke mixing with hay and leather. The heat hit him like a physical blow, but he pushed forward anyway. "Ethan, wait!" Willa's voice desperate behind him. He ignored her, plunging into the smoke. The world became heat and darkness, and the terrified sounds of horses trying to break free from their stalls. He found the first one by feel, fumbling with the latch, yanking it open. The horse bolted past him toward the light. 2 more. He had 2 more horses inside. The smoke was thicker now, choking, blinding. He dropped low, crawling toward where he knew the stall should be. Found another latch, opened it. The horse nearly trampled him in its panic to escape. 1 more. Just 1 more. The roof groaned above him, a sound like the earth splitting open. He pushed forward anyway, found the last stall, worked the latch with hands that were shaking from lack of air. The horse wouldn't move. "Come on, you stubborn bastard. Move!" He grabbed the halter, pulled hard. The horse reared, fighting him, too panicked to understand he was trying to save it. The roof groaned again, louder this time. "Ethan!" Willa's voice much closer than it should have been. He turned and saw her silhouette in the smoke moving toward him. "Get out now. Not without you." She reached them, grabbed the horse's other side. Together, they pulled, dragged, forced the animal toward the door. The roof gave way just as they cleared the entrance. The crash was deafening, followed by an explosion of sparks that shot into the sky like demonic fireworks. Ethan and Willa hit the ground hard, the horse bolting to safety while flames consumed what was left of his barn. Tom and several men from town had arrived with buckets, forming a chain to the well. They worked frantically to keep the fire from spreading to the house and other outbuildings. Ethan tried to stand help, but his lungs weren't cooperating. He coughed hard enough to taste blood. Willa was beside him, her face streaked with soot, her dress torn and singed. "You could have died." The horses could have died too, but they didn't. You saved them. She grabbed his shoulders. "You saved them and nearly killed yourself doing it. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking I couldn't let them burn. I couldn't—" He coughed again, harder. "I couldn't lose them too." Her expression shifted from anger to understanding. "This isn't about the horses. This is about the war. About the men you couldn't save. Don't. Ethan, you can't keep trying to make up for the past by risking your life every chance you get. That's not heroism. That's suicide by installments. You don't understand. I understand that you ran into a burning building without thinking, without planning, because some part of you thinks you deserve to suffer, that you deserve to die for surviving when others didn't." She shook him slightly. "But I need you to understand something right now. You matter. Your life matters. And if you throw it away trying to atone for sins you didn't commit, then what was the point of any of this? The point of us. Of this." Her voice cracked. "Of me standing here terrified that I just watched you die because you value yourself so little that you'd rather burn than live." The raw pain in her voice cut through his smoke-addled thoughts. He reached for her face, wiped away the tear cutting through the soot on her cheek. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Just promise me you won't do it again. Promise me you'll start acting like your life is worth protecting." Before he could answer, Tom jogged over. "Fire's contained. Barn's a total loss, but the house is safe. Outbuildings too." He looked at them both. "You two all right?" "We're fine," Willa said, not moving from Ethan's side. "Good. Because Sheriff Wade wants to talk to you, Morrison. Says this wasn't no accident." Ethan's head snapped up despite the pain in his chest. "What?" "Found signs of accelerant. Someone set this fire deliberately." The words hit like a punch. Willa's hand tightened on his arm. "Who would do that?" she asked. "That's what the sheriff wants to know." Tom's expression was grim. "He's got some questions about your property boundaries. Something about a dispute." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Marcus Dalton. The rancher from the South Ridge? He's been trying to buy my water rights for 2 years. I've refused every offer." Ethan pushed himself to his feet, Willa steadying him. "Last month, he threatened to take them by force if I didn't sell." "You never mentioned that," Willa said quietly. "Didn't think he'd actually do anything. Dalton talks big, but—" He stopped looking at the smoldering remains of his barn. "I was wrong." Sheriff Wade approached a tall man with hard eyes and a harder reputation. "Morrison, need a word." "Is it Dalton?" "Can't say yet, but I found boot prints near where the fire started, fresh ones, and a can of kerosene that doesn't match anything you keep in your shed." Wade pulled out a notebook. "Tell me about this dispute with Dalton." Ethan laid it out: the water rights, the offers, the escalating threats. Willa listened with growing horror as he described Dalton's visit last month, the thinly veiled intimidation, the suggestion that accidents happened to stubborn men who didn't know when to sell. "Why didn't you report this?" Wade asked. "Because threats are just words. I didn't think—" "You didn't think he'd follow through, but he did. Nearly killed you both in the process." Wade looked at Willa. "You shouldn't have been here, ma'am." "But I was. And I saw Mr. Morrison risk his life to save his animals." Her voice was steel. "I also saw evidence of arson. So what are you going to do about it, Sheriff?" "My job. But I need Morrison to press charges. Officially." "Consider it done," Ethan said immediately. "Good. I'll need a statement. Both of you." Wade closed his notebook. "And Morrison, watch your back. If Dalton's willing to burn your property, he might be willing to do worse." The sheriff walked away, leaving them standing in the aftermath of destruction. Ethan looked at what remained of his barn, years of work, reduced to ash and blackened timber. He should have felt devastated, should have been calculating the cost, the time to rebuild the setback this represented. Instead, all he could think about was the woman beside him, who'd run into smoke and fire without hesitation, who'd risked herself to help save his horses, who was looking at him now with an expression that made his chest tight for reasons that had nothing to do with smoke inhalation. "You could have died," he said quietly. "So could you. But we didn't." She took his hand. "We're both still here." "You shouldn't have come in after me. And you shouldn't have gone in alone. But we're both stubborn fools, so I suppose we're well matched." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "Well matched. Isn't that what I've been trying to tell you?" She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, without thinking. "We're better together than we are apart." Tom cleared his throat from a respectful distance. "Morrison, some of us are going to stay and keep watch tonight. Make sure nothing else catches. You should get cleaned up, see a doctor about those lungs." "I'm fine." "You're not fine," Willa said firmly. "You're coughing blood, and you can barely stand. We're going to Doc Miller's right now." "Willa, don't argue with me. I just watched you nearly die once today. I'm not going to watch it happen in slow motion because you're too stubborn to see a doctor." He wanted to protest, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't just concern, it was fear. Raw, genuine fear that he might actually be hurt worse than he realized. "All right, Doc Miller's." They rode back to town slowly. Ethan's breathing labored, Willa never straying more than a few feet from his side. By the time they reached the doctor's small office, his vision was starting to blur at the edges. Doc Miller took one look at him and immediately started preparing for treatment. "Smoke inhalation, possibly some burns. Miss Hayes, I'll need you to wait outside." "I'm staying." "This isn't proper." "I don't care about proper. I'm staying." Her voice left no room for argument. Miller sighed, but didn't push. He examined Ethan thoroughly, listening to his lungs, checking his hands and face for burns, asking questions about pain and breathing that Ethan answered through gritted teeth. "You're lucky," Miller finally said. "No serious burns, but your lungs took a beating. You need rest. No heavy work for at least a week." "A week I can't." "You can, and you will." Willa cut him off. "Unless you want permanent damage." "Listen to the lady," Miller said dryly. "She's got more sense than you do." Ethan slumped back against the examination table, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind pain and the crushing reality of what had happened. His barn was gone. Someone had tried to destroy his ranch, and he'd nearly gotten Willa killed in the process. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "How is someone else's arson your fault?" Willa asked. "Because I should have seen it coming. Should have taken Dalton's threats more seriously. Should have what? Read his mind, predicted the future." She moved to stand in front of him. "This is not your fault, Ethan. This is the fault of a greedy man who thinks he can take what doesn't belong to him through violence and intimidation." "But you were there. You could have been hurt because I was there because I chose to be. Because when someone I care about is in danger, I don't run away. I run toward them. She took his hands, soot-stained and scraped. And yes, I was terrified. Yes, I thought we might both die in that barn. But I would make the same choice again in a heartbeat. Do you understand what I'm saying? He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw it written clearly in her eyes. She wasn't just talking about the fire. She was talking about them. About this thing growing between them that neither of them could name yet, but both of them felt. I can't promise to keep you safe, he said roughly. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me stand beside you while we both try to stay alive and build something worth fighting for. She squeezed his hands. Can you do that? Can you stop trying to protect me from every possible danger and just let me choose to be here? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with everything they'd been through, everything they'd survived. I don't know how. Then learn. We'll learn together. She leaned in closer. Because I'm not going anywhere, Ethan Morrison. Not because of gossip, not because of fire, and certainly not because you're too stubborn to admit you need someone. Need someone, he echoed. Is that what this is? It's part of it. The other part is wanting someone, choosing them, deciding that despite all the risks and dangers and possibilities for heartbreak, they're worth it. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You're worth it, even if you don't believe it yet. Doc Miller cleared his throat loudly. I'm going to step outside for a few minutes. Give you two some privacy. Try not to tax his lungs too much, Miss Hayes. The door closed behind him. Silence filled the space, heavy with unspoken words. Willa? Ethan started, then stopped, unsure how to finish. I know. It's too fast. Too soon. Too dangerous. She brought his hand to her cheek. But I'm done living my life in fear of what might happen. I'm done choosing safety over possibility. And I'm done pretending I don't feel what I feel when I look at you. What do you feel? Hope, terror, possibility. She smiled soft and sad. The beginning of something that could either heal us both or break us completely. And I'm willing to risk finding out which one it is. Are you? His answer came in the form of pulling her closer, resting his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of smoke and lavender, and everything that was her. Yes, he whispered. God help me, yes. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, letting the decision settle between them like something sacred and terrifying. When Doc Miller knocked gently and re-entered, they pulled apart, slowly, reluctantly. I'm prescribing rest and clean air, Miller said, pretending he hadn't seen anything. And Miss Hayes, I'm prescribing that you make sure this stubborn fool actually follows orders. I can do that. Good. Because if he doesn't, those lungs will scar permanently. Miller handed Ethan a small bottle. Tonic. Twice a day. Tastes like hell, but it'll help with the coughing. They left the office together, stepping into late afternoon sun that felt too normal after everything that had happened. People stared as they walked down the main street, Willa's hand tucked into the crook of Ethan's arm, like she belonged there. They're all looking, he said quietly. Let them look. I'm tired of caring what they think. Your reputation is my own to manage, not theirs. She squeezed his arm. Besides, after today, I think we're past worrying about propriety. Mrs. Patterson stood outside the general store, her mouth a thin line of disapproval. She opened it to speak, but Willa cut her off with a smile sharp as broken glass. Lovely day, isn't it, Mrs. Patterson? Despite the fire and attempted murder, I mean. The older woman's mouth snapped shut. Ethan felt something like pride surge through his chest. They made it to Willa's room without further interruption. She unlocked the door, ushered him inside, and immediately began heating water on the stove. What are you doing? You need to wash. You're covered in soot and ash and probably half a barn. She pulled out a basin, started gathering cloths. Sit. I can clean up at home. Your home is currently surrounded by men watching for another fire. You're staying here until we figure out what happens next. Willa, I can't stay in your room. The scandal will be exactly the same whether you stay an hour or all night, so you might as well be clean and rested while people gossip. She poured hot water into the basin. Now stop arguing and take off that shirt. He hesitated, then obeyed. The shirt was ruined anyway, scorched and torn and reeking of smoke. When he pulled it over his head, Willa's breath caught. What? Your back. Ethan, your back is covered in burns. He'd forgotten about those, hadn't even felt them in the chaos. They'll heal. They need to be cleaned and dressed properly, or they'll get infected. She moved behind him, her fingers gentle on his shoulder. This is going to hurt. I've had worse. I know you have. But you don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt when it's just us. The tenderness in her voice nearly undid him. He sat still while she cleaned the burns with careful precision, each touch both painful and somehow comforting. She worked in silence, and he closed his eyes, letting himself feel cared for in a way he hadn't allowed in years. There, she said finally, securing the last bandage. Done. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to deal with Dalton. She came around to face him. What exactly does he want with your water rights? Control. There's a creek that runs through my property, only reliable water source for miles during dry season. If he owns it, he controls everything downstream. Can charge whatever he wants, squeeze out smaller ranchers, build an empire. Ethan's jaw tightened. I won't let him use my land to destroy other people's livelihoods. Even if it means he keeps coming after you. Especially then. Willa studied him. You know this isn't going to end with the barn, right? He'll escalate. Try something worse. I know. And you're still not going to sell. Would you, if you were in my position? She smiled slightly. No, I'd fight him tooth and nail, and probably get myself killed in the process. Her expression sobered. Which is why we need a plan that doesn't end with either of us dead. Did you think I was going to let you handle this alone? She sat beside him. We're in this together now. That's what you agreed to in Doc Miller's office. I agreed to let you stand beside me. I didn't agree to let you get caught in the crossfire of a range war. Too late. I'm already caught. She took his hand. So we might as well figure out how to win. Before he could respond, boots thundered up the stairs. Tom Fletcher burst through the door without knocking, face flushed with urgency. Morrison Dalton's at the saloon, drinking and bragging about how some people need to learn when to take a deal. Ethan was on his feet, instantly reaching for his shirt. Ethan, no. Willa grabbed his arm. That's exactly what he wants. You go in there angry, you'll give him an excuse to claim self-defense when he shoots you. She's right, Tom said. Half the town's in there listening to him. You walk in looking for a fight, it'll be your word against his. So what, I just let him celebrate burning down my barn? No, you let Sheriff Wade handle it legally while you stay alive. Willa's grip tightened. Please, don't give him what he wants. The rational part of his brain knew she was right. The part that had kept him alive through war and wilderness knew that rage was a luxury he couldn't afford. But the part that had just watched his livelihood burn wanted blood. I need to do something. Then do something smart, not something stupid. She stood still, holding his arm. Tom is Wade at the saloon. Last I saw, he was headed that way. Good. Then he'll handle Dalton, and we'll handle rebuilding. She looked at Ethan. That's how we fight him. Not with fists or guns, but by refusing to be broken. By building back stronger than before. He wanted to argue. Wanted to storm down to the saloon and make Dalton answer for what he'd done. But looking at Willa's face, seeing the fear she was trying to hide beneath determination, he forced himself to breathe. All right, we rebuild. Tom let out a relieved breath. Smart choice. I'll go make sure Wade knows what Dalton's saying. Might be enough to bring him in for questioning. After Tom left, Ethan sat down heavily, the fight draining out of him. I hate this. Hate feeling powerless. You're not powerless. You're choosing strategy over emotion. That takes more strength than throwing punches. Willa knelt in front of him. And you're not alone in this. I meant what I said. We rebuild together. You don't have to. Stop telling me what I don't have to do. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing us. Her eyes blazed. So unless you're planning to push me away, you're stuck with me. I don't want to push you away. Then don't. Let me help. Let me be part of this. He pulled her up to sit beside him, kept her hand in his. I'm not used to this. Having someone who wants to stay. I'm not used to wanting to stay. But here we are. She leaned her head on his shoulder, terrified and scarred and choosing each other anyway. They sat in silence as the light faded outside. Eventually, Willa made them both eat something, bread and cheese that tasted like sawdust, but filled the empty spaces. When full dark fell, she lit lamps and pulled out her schoolwork grading papers while Ethan dozed fitfully in her only chair. He woke to shouting outside. Willa was already at the window looking down at the street. What is it? Dalton. He's drunk, and he's got men with him. Her voice was tight. They're heading toward the Mercantile. Ethan moved to the window, saw Marcus Dalton swaying in the street with 3 hired hands flanking him. Even from this distance, he could see the mean set to Dalton's mouth, the aggressive swagger of a man who thought he owned the world. I'm going down there. No. You're injured and outnumbered. I can't just hide up here while he terrorizes the town. You're not hiding. You're being smart. But her hand was already reaching for her shawl. Though if you're going down there, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Then you're staying here. She blocked the door. I'm not letting you walk into a fight you can't win. Willa. No, I didn't pull you out of a burning barn just to watch you get shot in the street. Her voice shook. Please, just wait. Let Wade handle this. But Wade wasn't anywhere in sight, and Dalton was getting louder, shouting about cowards who wouldn't face him like men. Where's Morrison? Dalton bellowed. Where's that stubborn son of a bitch who thinks he's better than everyone else? Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to go down there to defend himself, to fight. But Willa was right. It was a trap. Dalton wanted him to react, wanted an excuse to escalate this into violence. He's trying to provoke you, Willa whispered. Don't give him the satisfaction. I know. Then why are you shaking? Because standing here doing nothing while he threatens everything I've built is killing me. He forced himself to breathe. But you're right. This is what he wants. Below, Sheriff Wade finally appeared, moving with deliberate calm toward Dalton. That's enough, Marcus. Go home and sleep it off. I don't take orders from you, Wade. I take orders from God and my bank account, and both tell me I'm in the right. Burning down a man's barn isn't right by any standard. I didn't burn nothing. Can't prove I did either. Dalton grinned ugly and triumphant. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy Morrison's land at auction when he can't afford to rebuild. Going to take those water rights legal and proper. Morrison's not selling. He will when he realizes he can't fight me and win. I've got money, I've got men, and I've got time. Dalton's voice carried up to the window. All Morrison's got is stubbornness and a pretty widow to keep him warm at night. That won't rebuild his barn, won't save his ranch. And it sure as hell won't stop me from taking what should have been mine from the start. Willa's hand found Ethan's, squeezed hard. He wanted to let go, wanted to storm down there and make Dalton eat those words. But her grip anchored him, kept him from making a fatal mistake. You're drunk, Marcus, and you're making threats in front of witnesses. Wade's hand moved to his gun. I'd suggest you head home before I'm forced to arrest you for disturbing the peace. You can't arrest me for speaking truth. I can arrest you for public intoxication and making threats. Your choice how this goes. Dalton stared at Wade for a long moment, then spat in the dirt. "This isn't over." "No, it's not. But it's over for tonight." Wade gestured toward Dalton's men. "Get him home, and tell him when he sobers up that I'll be asking questions about that fire. Questions he'd better have answers for." Dalton let his men lead him away, still muttering threats. Wade looked up at Willa's window, tipped his hat in acknowledgement, then disappeared into the darkness. Ethan realized he was trembling, not from fear, but from the effort of holding himself back. Willa pulled him away from the window, sat him down, held both his hands until the shaking stopped. "You did the right thing." "Doesn't feel right." "I know. But charging down there would have gotten you killed, and then where would I be?" She touched his face gently. "I need you alive, Ethan, more than I need you to be a hero." "I'm not a hero." "You are to me. You were a hero when you saved those horses. You were a hero when you chose not to fight Dalton tonight." Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. "And you're a hero for letting me stand beside you instead of pushing me away to keep me safe." He turned his face into her palm, closed his eyes. "I don't know how to do this, how to let someone care this much." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together." She leaned forward, rested her forehead against his. One day at a time, one moment at a time. They stayed like that until exhaustion finally pulled them under. Willa gave him her bed, insisted on sleeping in the chair despite his protests. He was too tired to argue, too worn down by smoke and fear and the emotional rawness of the day. But in the middle of the night, he woke to find her sitting on the floor beside the bed, her head resting on the mattress near his hand. He shifted slightly, and she stirred, looked up at him with sleep-heavy eyes. "What are you doing on the floor?" "Couldn't sleep in the chair. Kept worrying you'd stop breathing." "Willa, don't. Don't tell me I'm being ridiculous. I almost lost you today. Twice. I'm allowed to be scared." Her voice was small, vulnerable, in a way he'd never heard before. He moved over, made room on the narrow bed. "Come here." "That's not proper." "I don't care about proper anymore. Get up here before you freeze on that floor." She climbed up beside him, carefully keeping space between them. But when he wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close, she didn't resist. Just curled into him like she belonged there, her head on his chest, her breath warm against his neck. "This is going to be complicated," she whispered. "I know. People are going to talk. Let them. Dalton's going to keep coming. I know that too. And we're both terrified of this." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "But you're not going to run." "No, I'm done running." He held her tighter. "Are you done running or done being afraid?" "Either. Both." "I don't think I'll ever be done being afraid. Fear keeps us alive." She pressed closer. "But I'm done letting fear make my decisions for me. Done choosing safety over happiness." "Is that what this is, happiness?" "It could be, if we let it." She tilted her head up to look at him in the darkness. "Can we let it? Can we choose this despite everything?" He thought about Danny Cooper and all the others. Thought about 6 years of guilt and isolation. Thought about standing in that burning barn, certain he was going to die, and his only regret being that he'd wasted so much time being afraid to live. "Yes," he said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in years. She kissed him, then soft and sweet and tasting of salt from tears he hadn't seen her cry. He kissed her back, pouring 6 years of loneliness into it. 6 years of wanting something he'd been too scared to reach for. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she smiled against his mouth. "Well, that's new. Good new or bad new? Terrifying new, which I'm starting to think is the same as good new." She settled back against his chest. "Go to sleep, Ethan. We'll deal with everything else in the morning." But morning came too fast and brought problems with it. Tom Fletcher was pounding on the door before dawn, shouting about smoke. Ethan and Willa jerked awake, untangling themselves in a panic. "What is it?" Ethan called through the door. "It's the schoolhouse. Someone set it on fire." Willa went white. "The children's work, the books, everything." She was out the door before Ethan could stop her, running down the stairs in her nightdress and bare feet. He grabbed his boots and followed, heart pounding. The schoolhouse was already engulfed when they arrived, flames eating through the wooden structure like it was made of paper. Willa stood frozen, watching months of work disappear into smoke. "All of it," she said numbly. "All their primers. The books I brought from Boston. The letters they wrote to their families." "We can replace books," Ethan said, putting his hands on her shoulders. "Not the letters. Not their work." She turned to him, eyes blazing. "This was Dalton. He couldn't get to you through the barn, so he's going through me. You don't know that. I know that my schoolhouse is burning the day after I stood beside you publicly. I know that Dalton threatened you, and now he's destroying everything I've built here." Her voice shook with rage. "This is my fault. I made myself a target by caring about you. No, this is Dalton's fault. Only his. But if you hadn't what shown kindness, offered help, stood up to bullies." He gripped her shoulders tighter. "You can't blame yourself for someone else's cruelty. Watch me." She pulled away, staring at the flames. "I should have known better. Should have kept my distance. Should have protected what I had instead of risking it for what? For me." The words came out sharper than he intended. "Is that what you were about to say? That you should have protected your precious, safe life instead of risking it for someone damaged like me?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Willa? Because it sounds like you're regretting everything that's happened between us." "I'm regretting that my students will have nowhere to learn, that their families trusted me to educate their children, and now I have nothing to offer them." Tears cut through the soot on her face. "I'm regretting that being with you has made me a target for a violent man who will apparently stop at nothing to get what he wants." "Then maybe you should walk away. Be safer without me." She stared at him like he'd slapped her. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "I want you to be safe." "Well, I want you to be safe too. But I didn't walk away when your barn burned. I didn't suggest you give up and let Dalton win." Her voice rose to a shout. "So don't you dare stand there and tell me to leave because things got hard. We're past that now. We're in this together. Or did last night mean nothing to you?" The fight went out of him. "Last night meant everything." "Then act like it. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. Stop assuming I'm too fragile to handle the consequences of choosing you." She stepped closer, grabbed his shirt. "I'm not fragile, Ethan. I'm furious. And I'm not going anywhere until we make Dalton pay for what he's done." Sheriff Wade approached, his expression grim. "Miss Hayes, Morrison, we need to talk." "Did you find Dalton?" Willa demanded. "Found him at his ranch. He's got alibis for the whole night. Says he was home with his foreman and 2 hands. He's lying. Probably, but I can't prove it, yet." Wade pulled out his notebook. "I need you both to tell me everything you know. Every threat, every interaction, every detail that might help me build a case." They spent the next hour laying out everything: the water rights dispute, the threats, both fires, Dalton's drunken rant the night before. Wade took notes, asked sharp questions, and promised to dig deeper. "In the meantime," he said, "I'd advise you both to be careful. If Dalton's escalating like this, he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants." "What he wants is my land," Ethan said flatly. "What he wants is control, and he's willing to hurt anyone who gets in his way to get it." Wade looked at Willa. "That includes you now, Miss Hayes. You've made yourself his enemy by standing with Morrison." "Then I'll stand with Morrison and be his enemy. I've faced down worse than Marcus Dalton." "Have you faced down a man willing to burn buildings with people inside them?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "No," Willa admitted. "But I'm about to learn." Wade's warning echoed in Ethan's head for the rest of that day and into the next. He moved Willa's belongings to the ranch that afternoon over her token protests, reasoning that if Dalton was targeting her, she'd be safer where Ethan could watch over her. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Her room above the Mercantile had seemed scandalous a week ago, but now nobody blinked at her staying at his ranch with half the town's men camping on his property as guards. "This is insane," Willa said on the third night watching Tom Fletcher and 6 others settle in around a campfire outside. "We're living under siege. We're being cautious. We're being hunted." She turned from the window, arms crossed. "And I hate it. Hate that Dalton's made me afraid in my own town. Hate that he's turned your ranch into a fortress. Hate that we're waiting for him to make the next move instead of stopping him ourselves. What would you have us do? Wade's building a case. Wade's been building a case for 3 days, and Dalton's still free, still threatening, still winning." Her voice was sharp with frustration. "Meanwhile, my students have no school, your barn's still ashes, and we're hiding like criminals while he walks around town like he owns it. He'll make a mistake. Men like Dalton always do. And how many more buildings burn before he does? How many more people get hurt?" She moved closer, grabbed his hands. "I can't just sit here waiting, Ethan. It's killing me." He understood that. Understood the helplessness, the rage at being forced into a defensive position. But he also understood that charging at Dalton without a plan would get them killed. "Then we need to make him make that mistake. Force his hand." "How?" Before he could answer, Tom burst through the door without knocking. "Morrison, you need to hear this. Now." They followed him outside where one of Dalton's hired hands, a young man named Jimmy, stood wringing his hat in his hands, looking terrified. "Tell them what you told me," Tom said. "Mr. Dalton's planning something big, tomorrow night." Jimmy's voice shook. "He's been meeting with men from out of town. Rough men. The kind who don't ask questions if the money's right." Ethan's blood went cold. "What kind of something?" "I don't know exactly, but I heard him tell his foreman to make sure Morrison wasn't at the ranch tomorrow night. Said it needed to look like an accident, like maybe Morrison fell asleep with a lamp burning and the whole place went up." Jimmy looked at Willa. "And he said to make sure the school teacher was inside when it happened." Willa's face went white. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked, forcing his voice to stay level. "Because I didn't sign up to murder nobody. I needed work, and Mr. Dalton pays good, but I ain't killing people for money. That's not who I am." Jimmy met his eyes directly. "My mama taught me better than that." "Will you testify to Sheriff Wade?" "I will. But I don't know if it'll be enough. Dalton's got half the county in his pocket. Judges, lawmen, politicians." Jimmy's shoulders slumped. "He always wins. That's just how it is." "Not this time," Willa said, her voice like iron. "This time he's going to lose." "Ma'am, with all respect, you don't know what you're up against. Dalton's is a bully who thinks money and violence make him untouchable, but he's wrong." She looked at Ethan. "We're going to prove it, tomorrow night." "Willa, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we give Dalton exactly what he wants. We make him think we're at the ranch tomorrow night. Make him commit to this plan. And then we catch him in the act with witnesses he can't buy or threaten." Tom shook his head. "That's too dangerous. If something goes wrong." "Then we'll handle it. But I'm done being afraid. Done letting him control our lives through fear." She grabbed Ethan's arm. "We end this tomorrow, one way or another." It was a terrible plan. Reckless and risky, and likely to get them killed. But looking at Willa's fierce determination, at the way she was choosing to fight instead of hide, Ethan couldn't bring himself to argue. "We'll need Wade on board," he said instead. "Then let's go convince him." Sheriff Wade listened to their plan with increasing skepticism, but Jimmy's testimony finally swayed him. By midnight, they had a strategy, dangerous, yes, but possible. Wade would hide men around the ranch. Ethan and Willa would appear to be inside, but would actually be positioned to witness whatever Dalton tried. When he made his move, they'd have him dead to rights with multiple witnesses. This only works if everyone plays their part perfectly, Wade warned. One mistake, and people die. We understand the risks, Willa said calmly. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're betting your lives that Dalton's arrogance will make him sloppy. That's exactly what we're betting on. She looked at Ethan. And I think we're going to win. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan and Willa made a show of going about normal business. Her visiting the temporary classroom set up in the church basement, him checking on his horses, and meeting with suppliers about barn materials. To anyone watching, they looked like two people trying to rebuild their lives despite the threats. But underneath, they were preparing for war. As sunset approached, they returned to the ranch together, lit lamps in the windows, moved around inside, making shadows that would suggest they were settling in for the night. Then they slipped out the back, circled around to the position Wade had designated, and waited. "What if he doesn't come?" Willa whispered. "Then we try again tomorrow. And if he does come, then we finish this." She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They sat in silence as darkness fell completely, watching the ranch house glow with false occupation. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "So am I. But you're not running." "Neither are you." She tilted her head up to look at him. "When this is over, when we win, what happens then? We rebuild. The barn, the school, our lives." He touched her face gently. "Together. Together," she echoed and kissed him like it might be the last time. Movement in the darkness made them pull apart. 4 men on horseback approached the ranch slowly, deliberately. Even in the dim starlight, Ethan recognized Dalton's bulk on the lead horse. "Here we go," Wade whispered from his position nearby. They watched Dalton and his men dismount, saw one of them pull out containers, lamp oil probably, or something worse. Dalton gave quiet orders, and the men spread out around the house. "Wait for it," Wade breathed. Dalton himself approached the front door, tried the handle, found it locked as expected. He stepped back, nodded to his men. "Now," Wade said, and chaos erupted. Lanterns flared to life all around the property, illuminating Dalton and his men in harsh light. Wade's deputies emerged from hiding, guns drawn. "Marcus Dalton, you're under arrest for attempted arson and conspiracy to commit murder." Dalton spun around, saw the trap, and his face twisted with rage. "You've got nothing. I was just checking on my neighbor's property. Heard there might be trouble. Save it for the judge. We've got witnesses, including one of your own men who turned state's evidence." Wade gestured to his deputies. "Take them." Dalton's men surrendered immediately, but Dalton himself reached for his gun. Everything slowed down. Ethan saw the movement, saw Wade's hand go to his own weapon, saw Willa start to stand. "Don't!" Ethan grabbed her, held her down as Wade fired a warning shot into the air. "Draw that weapon, and I will shoot you dead where you stand." Wade said, his voice deadly calm. "Your choice." For a long moment, Dalton's hand hovered over his gun. Then slowly, he raised both hands. "Smart choice," Wade said. "Cuff him." As the deputies secured Dalton, he caught sight of Ethan and Willa emerging from their hiding spot. His eyes went wide, then narrow with hatred. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything?" Dalton spat toward them. "I've got lawyers, I've got money. I'll be out by morning, and you'll still be a nobody rancher with a burned barn and a whore." Ethan's fist connected with Dalton's jaw before the word was fully formed. The rancher went down hard, blood streaming from his split lip. "That's for calling her that," Ethan said quietly, shaking out his hand. Wade sighed. "I probably should arrest you for that." "But you won't," Willa said, moving to stand beside Ethan. "No, I probably won't." Wade pulled Dalton to his feet. "Get him out of my sight before I let Morrison hit him again." They watched as Dalton and his men were loaded into a wagon, their threats and protests fading as they were taken away. When the last sound of hoofbeats disappeared, silence fell over the ranch. "Is it really over?" Willa asked. "The immediate danger. Yes. The legal fight." That's just beginning. Wade holstered his weapon. But you've got enough witnesses and evidence to make sure Dalton pays for what he's done. Jimmy's testimony alone will probably put him away for attempted murder. Thank you, Sheriff. Don't thank me. Thank yourselves for being brave enough to fight back. Wade tipped his hat. And maybe next time come to me before you set up a sting operation. We'll consider it, Ethan said. After Wade left, Ethan and Willa stood in front of his house. Their house, now he realized, and just breathed. The threat was gone. Dalton was in custody. They'd survived. We did it, Willa said, her voice shaking. We actually did it. You did it. This was your plan. Our plan. Our fight. Our victory. She turned to him, threw her arms around his neck. We won, Ethan. We stood up to a bully, and we won. He held her tight, buried his face in her hair, and let himself feel the relief. The triumph, the overwhelming gratitude that they were both still alive. I love you, he said, the words surprising him as much as her. She pulled back to look at him, eyes wide. What? I love you. I'm terrified of it, and I probably don't deserve it, but I love you. He cupped her face in his hands. And I don't want to waste another day pretending I don't. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You stubborn, impossible, beautiful man. I love you too. Have since the night I walked into your house uninvited and you looked at me like I was either crazy or dangerous. You're both. So are you. She laughed through her tears. We're perfect for each other. He kissed her, then long and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she smiled up at him. So what now? Now we rebuild. Everything. The barn, the school, our lives. He took her hand. Together. Together, she agreed. But first, we should probably go inside. People are still watching. He glanced around to see Tom and several others grinning at them from various positions around the property. Let them watch. I'm done hiding how I feel about you. Good. Because I'm done hiding too. She pulled him toward the house. Come on, we have planning to do. A wedding to arrange a barn to rebuild a school to reopen. Wait, a wedding? Did you think I was going to let you propose properly after everything we've been through? She laughed at his expression. We're getting married, Ethan Morrison. The only question is when. You're serious. Completely. Unless you're having second thoughts. He thought about it for exactly half a second. Not a single one. But shouldn't I be the one proposing? Feel free. I'll say yes. Will you marry me, Willa Hayes? Yes. Now can we go inside? It's freezing out here, and I'd like to celebrate our engagement somewhere warmer. They made it inside, and this time, when they stood in his kitchen, their kitchen, it felt different. Felt like home instead of just a place to sleep. Willa immediately started making tea like she'd done it 1,000 times before. We should set a date, she said, pulling out cups. How about next month? Next month. That's too soon. I need time to what, plan some elaborate Boston society wedding? He moved behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. I don't need elaborate. I just need you. Standing up in front of the Reverend and promising to love me even when I'm stubborn and broken and difficult. You're going to be all those things forever. I know. That's why I need you to promise anyway. She turned in his arms, touched his face gently. I promise. Through stubbornness and brokenness and difficulty. Through fires and threats and whatever else this territory throws at us. I promise to stand beside you and fight with you and love you until the day I die. That's quite a vow. Good. Because I mean every word. She kissed him softly. Next month it is. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. The town rallied around them in ways Ethan had never expected. Men showed up to help rebuild the barn without being asked. Women donated books and supplies for the new school. Even Mrs. Patterson, that old gossip, contributed fabric for new curtains, and offered grudging congratulations on the engagement. Dalton's trial was swift and brutal. Jimmy's testimony, combined with evidence from the fires and multiple witnesses to the attempted arson, left no room for doubt. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in territorial prison and ordered him to forfeit his water rights to be distributed among the smaller ranchers he'd tried to squeeze out. "Justice," Willa said when they heard the verdict. "Actual justice. Doesn't happen often out here. Then we should celebrate when it does." She squeezed his hand. "One threat down. Now we can focus on building instead of defending." The barn went up faster than Ethan had dreamed possible, raised by willing hands and genuine community support. The schoolhouse took longer, but Willa threw herself into it with fierce determination, and by the time their wedding day arrived, it was nearly complete. They married on a Sunday afternoon in late October, surrounded by the entire town. Willa wore a simple dress she'd made herself, cream-colored and practical, but beautiful in its simplicity. Ethan wore his best suit and tried not to shake when she walked down the aisle toward him. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony with genuine warmth, speaking about healing and second chances and the courage it takes to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. When it came time for vows, Ethan spoke from his heart. "I came back from the war broken. Spent 6 years thinking I didn't deserve happiness or peace or love. Then you walked into my house uninvited and refused to let me keep hiding." His voice caught. "You saved me, Willa. Not from fire or danger, but from myself. From the belief that I wasn't worth saving. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. Being the man you see when you look at me, even when I can't see it myself." Willa's tears flowed freely. "I came to Montana running from grief and suffocating sympathy. Found a hard territory and harder people, and thought maybe I could disappear into the work of teaching children their letters. Then I saw you, this stubborn, lonely, beautiful man who carried his pain like it was his duty, and I recognized myself in you. We saved each other, Ethan. Pulled each other out of the darkness we'd both been living in. I promise to keep pulling, keep fighting, keep choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives." When the Reverend pronounced them married, the kiss that followed was witnessed by half of Silver Creek and met with cheers that echoed off the mountains. At the reception in the newly rebuilt barn, Tom Fletcher stood up to give a toast. "I've known Ethan Morrison for 5 years, and in all that time I never saw him smile. Not once. He was a good man, a fair man, but a sad man." Tom raised his glass. Then Willa Hayes walked into his house uninvited, and everything changed. She didn't just bring him supper, she brought him back to life. So here's to Willa, the bravest woman in Montana, for taking on this ornery cuss. And here's to Ethan for being smart enough to let her. The barn erupted in laughter and applause. Ethan pulled Willa close, kissed her temple, and whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For walking into my house that night. For refusing to give up on me. For choosing me even when it was dangerous and difficult, and everyone thought you were crazy." "I am crazy. Crazy about you." She stood on her toes to kiss him properly. "Now dance with me before the fiddle player passes out from exhaustion." They danced until their feet hurt, ate cake until they were sick, and laughed more than Ethan had in his entire adult life. When the party finally wound down and they walked back to the house, their house properly, theirs now, the stars were brilliant overhead. "Happy?" Willa asked. "More than I thought possible." "Good, because we're just getting started." She looked up at the house, at the barn glowing with lamplight, at the land spreading out around them. "We're going to build something beautiful here, Ethan. A real home. A real life. Together." "Together," he agreed, pulling her inside and closing the door on the cold night. The years that followed brought challenges, droughts and harsh winters, difficult harvests and lean times. But they faced everything side by side, building their ranch into something prosperous and their marriage into something unshakable. Willa taught school for 3 more years before their first child came, a daughter they named Sarah, who had her mother's fierce determination and her father's quiet strength. Two more children followed, a son named William after Willa's first husband because healing meant honoring the past while building the future, and another daughter named Grace, who reminded them both that second chances were real and worth fighting for. Through it all, through every hardship and triumph, Ethan never forgot that night Willa walked into his house uninvited. Never forgot the gift she'd given him by refusing to let him stay alone. Never forgot that love sometimes meant taking the risk, making the first move, choosing possibility over safety. And every year on their anniversary, he made her the same meal she'd made that first night, beef stew and fresh bread and apple pie. And they ate it together at the same table, remembering where they'd started and celebrating how far they'd come. Because they'd both learned the most important lesson of all, that healing doesn't happen alone, that love requires courage, and that sometimes the best things in life come from taking the chance. Opening the door and letting someone walk in uninvited to offer you their heart along with supper. They built a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a legacy worth leaving together.